Brothers and sisters, revolution is at hand, and we all have a part to play. And so we meet tonight in the Assassin's Den.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Assassins Den podcast. I'm Loomer, your host as always, along with Andy, aka Escoblades, community developer on Assassin's Creed. Hello, Andy.
Hello again. How are you?
Good, thanks. And also joining us today is senior community developer on Assassin's Creed, Gabe Graziani, aka UB Gabe.
Hello.
And today I'm very excited to welcome to the show Dan Jeannotte, who plays Arno Dorian in Assassin's Creed Unity.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. This is going to be really awesome. So as always, we've collected community questions from the Assassin's Creed community for Dan, and those questions have been ranked, and we'll be asking him the most popular ones. And also, just a note that this podcast will contain full spoilers for Assassin's Creed Unity, the tie-in to Unity from Rogue, and the Dead Kings DLC.
Guys, everybody dies.
Well, it's like AC4 spoilers. Well, Unity too, I guess. Anyway, so, all right, why don't we kick it off with this question from Apple Samurai, who is from Iceland, a town in Iceland that I can't pronounce.
Cool. Wait, let me try. Hornafjordur.
Hey, that was
I
pretty
think
good,
that was spot on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good job.
Shout out to Iceland.
So, how did you end up being cast as Arno?
That's a great question to start off with. Well, I had I'm from Montreal, born and raised, and I've been working in film and TV and theater in Montreal for many years. And of course, Ubisoft has a big office in Montreal. They do a lot of work there, a lot of great work. And so I'd auditioned for Ubisoft many times in the past to do motion capture, and I had done a few voice jobs for them on AC3 and on Black Flag, kind of characters in the background and some crowd sounds and minor characters. I was like merchant number 2 in AC3.
Frightened inmate number 2. And are you one of the guys that is like, oh, what is he? I can only remember the Ezio ones, but he must be late and she must be beautiful. Like as you're running across the rooftops.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was like, a merchant that, Connor was shaking down or something, or okay. I don't even know who I was playing exactly. I do know that I think in Black Flag, if you are on any of the Spanish pirate ships and you listen carefully, you can hear me in the background making up Spanish.
When you say making up Spanish, you mean just words that just sound Spanish but aren't actual Spanish words?
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. Just sort of Spanish sounding gibberish.
You would think that Ubisoft would be able to hire someone who actually speaks Spanish for that kind of thing.
I
right?
I want to clarify, 9 out of 10 people who were doing this were Spanish speakers, and then there was me. I'm not sure how I got in there, but so it's like me in the back of the Spanish ship being like, ¿Dónde está el cuarto de baño, por favor?
Hello, señor.
in any case. I had done some voice stuff for them, and it was always a lot of fun. Always really interesting to they give you a time period. You're in the American Revolution right now, and you're playing this kind of character, and you're this afraid or you're this intimidating or whatever it might be. And it was always fun. And so I think that Ubisoft, they were aware of me because of the work that I had done on just little voices. And as I said, they brought me in to audition for different roles, but I never got any of those motion capture roles. And then eventually I auditioned for Unity. And when you audition for these games, you don't know what game you're auditioning for because, of course, Ubisoft is very secretive about everything they're producing while it's still in production, So all I knew was, I was playing a young some sort of young rogue who is, alternatingly angry and funny. I had a few different scenes to play. I think the scenes that I did are scenes that are still in the game or in the end product, I think. Mm-hmm. There was like a scene with Bellec and a scene with Elise. And, I had to audition for it the way that I'd audition for any kind of film or TV role. I go into the room, I have a few scenes, I've prepared those scenes, I perform them for the director and the writer, and they gave me a bit of feedback, and I try it again. But, with casting a role like Arno, they're obviously going to be pretty demanding about it. So I had to go back for a second audition, and then a third audition, and then a fourth audition. Mm. They brought me back many, many times. And eventually I became aware of what it was that I was auditioning for, this massive franchise.
Yeah.
That just made me even more nervous about it, of course. Yeah, in the end, I was just trying to, bring my own energy to it, but also take the direction that they gave me each time. I remember actually once Alex Amancio, creative director, telling me in an audition, you don't have to put on a voice. Obviously, I was putting on an accent because I don't have a British accent of my own. But I think I was talking like more like this, like I was just trying to be really intimidating,
Put on your Batman voice.
yeah, pretty much, And I don't know. I'm just thinking, well, this guy's supposed to be deadly, Shouldn't he sound really scary? But he told me, you can be a bit more yourself. You can tone it down a little bit. And in the end, I guess they liked what I was doing. And after many, many auditions, they decided that they could actually hire this guy to play this character. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's quite a jump from the smaller roles in the franchise to random Spanish question mark speaking person in AC4 to like the main protagonist. And I think you did it's funny, even I think you did a really great job with the role. And Arno, the character, I don't think there's been a universally beloved character since Ezio. And so Arno, as well as a lot of other ones, has kind of people who like him and don't. But when I was collecting questions for this podcast, I even had some people that were like, oh, I'm not really a big fan of Arno's character, but tell Dan he did a really great job. Like, I didn't like the character, but Dan did a really good job with the material and everything. And it's funny you mentioned accents, as part of the audition process, because I wanted to kind of lead into the highest voted question.
Here it is, the big one.
And I'm sure everybody knows what it is, but this is from, I think it's supposed to be Connie Chiwa, like Connie but Chiwa, like joke, I guess. I don't know, from New York City, who asked, what do you think of the developer's choice to go with British accents instead of French ones? Do you think, and then the second part is, do you think we would have been able to do a convincing French accent for Arno?
Yeah, that is a huge question, and I know that that's been on people's minds. Fans have been asking that question basically since, I guess, the first teaser trailer came out, or probably even before that. It's an interesting choice, but I understand why they decided to go with British accents, even though it takes place, in Paris, in France. There is a kind of, in film and in television, there is this conceit, there is a certain style of doing historical fiction with British accents that we've all gotten used to, You could see it obviously in shows like Rome or the movie Gladiator, which takes place in ancient Rome, where they would have been speaking Latin, I guess. And yet it's, Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix speaking with British accents. And I think as an audience, we've come to understand that that's what the past sounds like. The past has a British accent. And you even see it in like fantasy films or things like Game of Thrones. You know, Game of Thrones doesn't take place in ancient England. It takes place in a whole other world. And yet everyone has British accents and we all think that makes sense, you know? And I think Ubisoft, well, you know, I know from talking to them a bit about it, after doing a bit of, you know, testing and sort of talking to audiences and fans about it, they felt like a French accent wasn't going to be something that was as normal, I suppose, normal to listen to for, you know, a largely American audience, I guess, because the people playing the game in English are going to be, I'm not even sure if this is true, but I feel like it would be largely an American, North American audience, you know, and then people in different parts of the world will listen to the game in their own language, dubbed into their own language, I guess. I don't know. But I think that, you know, audiences are more accustomed to hearing British accents, less accustomed to hearing English being spoken with a French accent. And I think, you know, in terms of having just kind of a smooth product that is easy to listen to and understand, they decided, let's go with a British accent. I'm glad in a way they went with a British accent because, to speak to the second part of the question, I don't know if I would have been able to do a convincing French accent for Arno. Now I'm a Montrealer and I'm bilingual, but Quebec French is different than France French, you know? So if I could do a great Quebecois accent for Arno, and he'd be like, you know, you know, like, nothing is true, everything is permitted. That's not a war, it's not a creed, but it's a warning, you know? That would be my Quebecois version of Arno.
It sounds like I'm listening to one of the developers, like,
well,
when, like, for the games whenever they do interviews. Like,
Yeah,
well,
this is
there you
my
go.
life. I'm surrounded by this daily.
And I'll tell you, like, because I grew up speaking French and I grew up in Montreal hearing a mix of English and French. Quebecois French is like beautiful to me, and the Quebecois accent, I love it. You know, I'm not making fun of it when I do it right now. Like, it's like something that's ingrained in me. You know,
sure.
And then, you know, but French is, you know, it's like it's more refined in a way than Quebecois French. It's a little bit more like this, you know, you talk more at the front of your mouth. Similar to like the way that British English, you speak a little bit more carefully perhaps, you know, whereas we speak kind of like a bit more relaxed in our mouths. So there's a similar difference between France French and Quebec French, you know. But I don't know. I probably wouldn't have been able to do a super cool, badass French accent. You know, they would have needed to get like a guy from France to do that. Yeah. So in that respect, I'm glad they went with British because I can pull off a British accent. Yeah. And I wanted this part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to this point, I don't think they would they wouldn't just throw you in and say, okay, now do your French accent like for the whole game. They would give you a dialect coach similar to, you know, we talked to Roger Craig Smith. He obviously doesn't speak any Italian, and like, but he like worked up with, you know, the dialect coach to come up with an accent for Ezio, and and he delivered some really like serious speeches, and people love him and everything. So I don't know. I think you could do a French accent. That's just my opinion from like the very, very short time I've known you. But it is interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny you talk. Yeah, because I remember, you know, we talked to Alex Mancio. I talked to him at E3 about this, and then he's done some interviews, and people just keep asking about it. And I think it's because the answer just doesn't feel all that satisfying. Because you know, you're right that in that there is a lot of history of British accents being used, even with like the Prince of Persia games, you know, Sands of Time, which was created by a lot of future AC team people. You know, Prince has, you know, everyone has a British accent. Same with the movie that they made with Jake Gyllenhaal. You know, they're all British. The Prince of Persia is super British and everything. But like, I guess maybe it's just coming off the heels of both the precedents set by Ezio. You know, Ezio spoke with an Italian accent, and also, so it's totally inconsistent with that. But also just like, I guess coming off of AC4 for me personally, where a big selling point was that this franchise doesn't dumb down history. Like, we're not going to give you Pirates of the Caribbean. We're going to give you, like, the real history and everything. And like, Hollywood has their thing, but we're going to do it right. And then, like, you can't have it both ways, like, in my opinion, to just, like, be like, oh, well, Hollywood does it this way, so it's okay for us to do it. Like, it's just like, you can't just use it as a cop-out. I feel like, I don't know. I think people have had different reactions to it. I've definitely seen some people that are like, oh, no, I'm like, it didn't bother me, and I'm glad they didn't do French accents. Because French accents, especially in American culture, I can understand this. Like, it can be very stereotypical, and it's usually used in, like, comical sense.
Right, that's it, I think there is a bit of an attitude towards French accents that's, like, it's not the most positive attitude towards them.
It's like, oh, here's a snooty French it's very like they're usually caricatures, or it kind of carries a certain connotation with it. But I don't know, the British accents, like, I fall on the side of it just took me out of the game completely all the time, and I firmly believe it was the wrong thing to do, but obviously I'm not making the games. And I kind of feel like any accent can sound silly. Like, you can have a French accent without it being the Monty Python, like, oh, tell them we already got one, like type thing. Like, so you can make an Italian accent sound silly. You can make a British accent sound exaggerated. Like, I don't know. I
hear what you're saying. It's tricky, and I know what you mean. Like, the historical accuracy of the games would seem to suggest that they should have kept the accents that were natural to the setting.
Yeah.
And they made this kind of artistic choice, and I get that it wasn't popular with a lot of people. Yeah. Although I feel like I need to point out, not to you guys, but to anyone who might be listening, I had nothing to do with the choice of accents.
Right.
Because people, it's interesting, the people, like, fans will be like, Dan, why did you do a British accent? What were you thinking? And I'm like, man, it's not, I am not making those decisions. I just read what is put in front of me.
Yeah.
Can you please get back to making DLC for us, Dan?
Yeah.
Can you get back to the coding? Because this podcast is fun and everything, but
we have some
need more
to
game
fix.
content.
Yeah, right.
So I'm kind of curious. You talk about the audition process and accents. Did they have you ever adopt a French accent during the audition process or during the development of the game, or was it just always British? Like, from the
from the time I came on board, they had decided they were gonna use British accent.
Interesting. Okay.
So I auditioned with a British accent, and then once we were shooting, we were also working with a dialect coach. I remember there was one actor who came to a reading once we'd already started shooting, and he came to a reading and he just started reading his character with, like, a strong French accent. And we were like, did you not get the memo?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And he was just like, naturally enough, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought, like, this takes place in revolutionary France. I thought, anyway, never mind. It's like, again, we're actors, and we get asked to do a lot of weird stuff, and often you just got to roll with it.
So the next question for you comes from Tyne in Denmark, who would like to know what you thought of Arno's character. Specifically, how did you find his development through the story of Assassin's Creed Unity?
Well, for me as an actor, what I'm always looking for is a character, a story and a character that presents somebody going through some real, understandable difficulties in their lives, As actors, we don't want to play people who just stay the same. That's not interesting, We want to play characters who are forced to confront their own demons, or who are forced to, confront the evils of the world. And through that confrontation, something in them changes, That's sort of all we're hoping for as actors. And with Arno, I think, you know, I definitely got to see that kind of progress and that kind of change. You know, when he starts off, obviously he's not an assassin. I mean, in the game, he starts off as a little boy, you know, but then when I was playing him, he starts off as kind of like a, you know, a bit of a young punk. He's in an interesting place where he's like raised by a nobleman, but not as an equal, but as a kind of favorite servant is sort of the way it worked out. You know, he was kind of like a son to Monsieur de la Salle, but he was actually part of the household staff. You know, and he's a bit of a brat, and you know, kind of likes to screw around and likes to get into trouble and, you know, flirt with his boss's daughter. And but then I think he really gets the rug pulled out from underneath him. This world that he thought that he was safe in, living under Monsieur de la Salle's roof, that gets taken away from him because de la Salle is murdered. And then it's all kind of like a quick succession of events where, you know, he's blamed for the murder. He gets thrown into jail. Once he's in jail, he meets a guy who knew his father, and he tells him, you know, your father was a part of this ancient creed, and so much is happening to him all at once, and he's just still reeling from the fact that, like, his father figure has been murdered and he's been blamed for it, you know. And he's forced to go through a huge change. And I think it's a little bit of it's like a very exaggerated version of what everybody has to go through when they grow up, you know, when they realize that life is not as simple as they thought it was. You know, we all eventually, unfortunately, will go through the loss of our parents, you know, and the loss of our safety, our safe place. And, you know, he has to go through it very quickly and with a lot of swords and blood involved. He just has to grow up really fast. And I thought that was great. You know, I mean, just a great challenge as an actor, a great challenge as a human being to go through that, you know. And I like to see him sort of take charge of himself and his own life a little bit more. But then what's really interesting to me is that he doesn't just become a 100% hero, right? He's not just like suddenly this invincible, infallible guy. He still has faults. He still has fears. And then at more than one occasion in the story, he like breaks down, you know? He turns to the bottle and he just kind of tries to lose himself. He drinks and he just disappears, you know? And I thought that was a really interesting choice for a game, you know, like it's just Ubisoft is making such complex stories now, and like the hero, the player character is not just constantly kicking ass, you know? He can fail even when the player is doing the right thing. The player character can still fail because he's just human, you know? He succumbs to his fears. So I thought it was really interesting too to see him fall back, you know? He falls into despair and then pulls himself together again and joins the creed, you know? And then his attachment to the creed is really it changes, you know, because he's kind of in it as a means to an end. The important thing for him is really Elise and avenging Monsieur de la Salle, you know, and so his morals shift depending on the situation, and I think that's pretty natural. That's pretty human. You know what I mean?
I think I agree with all of that. I think for me, Arno underwent like two major transformations during the story. Obviously, as you've mentioned, the first one is the double trauma he suffers from. But he still tries to. I feel like he still tries to maintain some of that boyish naivete, you know, through it, and that's kind of like gets him through situations. It's like, hey,
That's
I'm a
his
charming
defense
guy and I
mechanism.
can laugh off situations. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. And then
Yeah.
the second time is when it's not actually the events of the end. It's just before that when he loses, in inverted commas, Elise, and his mask has to drop. Then it's like when he comes out the other side of that, he's a man. It's suddenly like, hey, I know what I need to do. I'm sure in myself. And so, yeah, I thought that was really interesting, the way that sort of there's peaks and troughs, as you said.
Yeah.
Dan, I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on Arno's kind of motivation, because going into the game's release, a big talking point was Arno's quest is one of redemption. And I kind of like this line near the end of the game where he's talking to the council, and like one of the members that I don't remember her name. I don't think they ever gave it, but she's like, and like, you've done all this like crazy stuff like in your quest for revenge, and Arno's like kind of indignantly like, redemption, like, and she's like, whatever, like, same thing kind of thing. I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because it's I don't know. I'm curious if you think it's more revenge or more redemption, and if it is redemption in the eyes of himself or Elise, because I could see both. But
yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, I feel like revenge and redemption are they're sort of two sides of a coin. Like revenge is sort of motivated more by anger. Or rather, revenge maybe is more motivated by anger outward, and redemption is like anger inwards, because like with redemption, you want to make up for past mistakes.
Yeah.
Whereas with revenge, you want to punish someone for their mistake, Yeah. So yeah, I do think for Arno, it's about redemption, because he's not a bloodthirsty guy. Well, I mean, I suppose it depends on how you play him, but he's, what he's trying to do the whole time through is not just like kill anyone who has ever wronged him. What he's trying to do is make up for what he perceives to be his own mistakes. Mm-hmm. He could have, in his mind, prevented Monsieur de la Salle's murder had he delivered that letter.
Yeah.
And he doesn't just because he's kind of like young and impetuous and bored, he's just like, I want to get out of here. I want to get to that party,
Yeah.
And he doesn't think much of it at the time. And then he finds out, like, if he had actually done what he said he was going to do, he could have warned Monsieur de la Salle and prevented his murder. And that, that weighs on him so heavily. Like, even though he does still put on a bit of the facade of being a smart ass and being a tough guy, being unaffected, he's very affected by that. Like, this man took him in, raised him, was good to him. Like, Arno could have been just like an orphan, just a nobody, but he was raised in a good house. And he, met Elise, who was his best friend and then became his love, and it was all because of de la Salle. And so, yeah, I think Arno very much feels like he needs to make up for that, both to himself and to Elise, definitely also to Elise, because now she's the only thing he has left, really, like, his association with the Brotherhood is, he finds some companionship there, I guess. But
he's always got Bellec to chum around, and
yeah,
they had a right. Like, it's not.
He thinks he's got a good buddy in Bellec, but little does he know. And I think that kind of just goes to further convince him when Bellec betrays the Brotherhood. I think Arno's just further convinced, like, man, I've got nobody except for Elise, So, yeah, it's revenge, but more than anything, it's about just, like, reconnecting with Elise and, like, making sure she's safe, making sure he's safe, and making sure she knows that he's on her side,
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's funny because I I almost get a feeling, and this is just my read of the story, but like it's almost like he didn't, like it was really devastating to him when he found out because of how disappointed Elise was. And to be fair, like she was kind of a dick when she revealed it too. It was almost like the Hatham Kenway, like, oh, and guess who actually burned down your village? It's like she's like, and oh, but you did have something to do with it. And it's like, wow, you're kind of sorry. Okay, I should get this out of the way before we go into the podcast. I did not like Elise like as a character. Like I tried really hard, and then I just had to accept the fact I didn't.
Okay, you're talking about my girlfriend.
Yeah, right. But like, yeah, I don't know. It almost felt to me like Arno, like when she like reveals that to him though with the letter, he's like, oh shit, no, like Elise. There's kind of like a weird dynamic throughout the story where I almost feel like, you know, Arno's number one priority is Elise, you know, and they make this very clear, like between the way that they made their decisions. But, you know, Elise doesn't care about Arno as much as she cares about getting her father's killer. And I think that makes a very sad dynamic throughout.
Yeah, it's tragic. It's a tragic love story. And I agree with you. She cares more about her idea of justice and revenge than she cares about Arno.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so sad and affecting, you know? Because,
yeah,
I mean... Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't know. If it had been, you know, that at the last moment when they were ready to kill Germain, you know, she was like, actually, that doesn't matter to me. I just want to be with you. I think that would have been kind of frustrating too. People would have thought, well, that doesn't seem realistic.
Sure.
You know, it's not likable. You know, her choice and her the way that she behaves isn't likable, but I think it's realistic in a way, because the thing we need to remember about Elise is that she was raised as a Templar. So it's kind of like being raised into a cult, right? She wasn't brought into the Templar. She was raised as a Templar, which means like from your earliest days, all you know is this way of being and this way of thinking, you know?
Very true. Very true.
So I think that totally, you know, it is not talked about in the game overtly, but in my mind, that's like a thing that seriously colors her character, is that she's been a part of this world from the time she was born. So she doesn't have perspective on it, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas Arno has perspective because he doesn't know anything about Assassins or Templars until it all goes down, you know? So he lives his life and then finds out about all this stuff. So he's able to weigh like, well, I know what the real world is like and how people behave normally versus how the Assassins behave or how the Templars behave, you know? So he's got perspective, whereas I don't think she does.
Yeah, you know, I never thought about that. Maybe it's because she doesn't really engage in like a lot of philosophical discussion about the Templars, but it's true that they are very much like about, you know, kind of the greater good type of thinking, and that definitely could factor into something like the decision to go after Germain, even if it means sacrificing herself for it.
Yeah, yeah.
We have another question from Mr. Snrub from someplace far away, who asks, what aspects of yourself did you give to Arno, and what of Arno do you see in yourself?
Good question, Mr. Snrub. Yeah, well, I mean, something that we touched on that I definitely think that Arno and I have in common is using humor as a defense mechanism. You know, I think this is something that a lot of people do, and maybe especially people who, you know, when they're younger. You know, when I was younger, I was a big reader. I was a smart kid, but I wasn't like a big guy. You know, I wasn't strong or fast. I was kind of a nerdy little guy. And developing my sense of humor and my wit was a way of deflecting attention and diffusing tension. You know, like if you can make a joke, people are less likely to want to punch you. And I think, you know, I feel like there's people who are going to listen to this who are going to know what I mean. You know, like when we're when we're not the toughest or the coolest kid, our intellect or our wit can get us out of trouble sometimes, or can protect us. And at the same time, it can function as a weapon, when you can't actually hurt anybody because you're scrawny. you can hurt them with your words, or you can hurt them by being smarter than them and by saying something that's going to go over their heads, and so I definitely think that Arno and I have that in common. Humor as both a defense mechanism and as a weapon sometimes. And it's an interesting, it's not like I don't know, I don't think it's a great quality in myself, like being a smart ass or being sarcastic is not a great quality. But I know where it comes from, So Arno and I have that in common, I guess. And what else? I mean, both of our families were killed by Templars. No, that's not true. Yeah, and I think what I really appreciate about Arno, and I sort of made reference to this before, is that he wants to do better. He knows that he has made mistakes in the past. He's aware of them, and he wants to fix them. And I'm a human being. I have made mistakes, but I like to think that I'm aware of the mistakes that I've made, and I have regrets, but I do what I can in the moment to make up for the mistakes that I've made, and I think that's an admirable quality in him. I don't have it as much. I don't have it to such a great extent as he does. He's really dead set on making things right, and I think that's a quality that I aspire to.
I did some of the moments where Arno is kind of irreverent, like when he's getting inducted to the Assassins and they're like, do you agree to uphold? And he's like, if you want me to join you, sure. If that's what you're trying to say, then sure. Like, I really enjoyed those moments because the French Assassins are so ceremonial. It's actually some of my favorite parts of the game were kind of the dynamic of how the Assassins were set up in Arno and the Templars. I did enjoy kind of like, he just doesn't care for authority or ceremony.
Sure.
And he's kind of like a little bit of a smartass in that respect. But, I was thinking about after the game was over too, and I was just trying to like figure out, like what I thought of the story and what I thought of Arno. And I think like a lot of that humor and wit also is kind of like a defense mechanism. It feels like he doesn't let people in very much, and not even Elise all that much, I feel like. And that includes the players as well, I get the feeling. Almost like he's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of the conclusion I came to. I don't know if Gabe or Andy, if you agree or not, but it's almost like he's almost kind of hiding himself all the time. And he's like, I don't know if he's afraid to let people in or what.
No, I agree, and I think it kind of touches on what we said a little bit earlier about his character, right? In that, like, I felt like there was a middle part of the story where he's still, he has that defense mechanism constantly. That's his thing that he projects all of the time. It's a mask, and it's not until certain actions in his life force him to drop that mask. It's like, look, I need to step up and be who I really am, not this person that I think other people want me to be, or how I feel is the best way to diffuse the situation or whatever, right? So I feel that comes through a lot. I feel that Dan did a great job of bringing that through just
definitely.
in the performance. So.
Yeah, and I also saw it as kind of like being born out of his, kind of his way of handling his father being killed at such a young age, like growing up with that kind of trauma. And we talked about this a little bit when we were talking to Noah Watts, who did Connor, about just, I think it's very different, in my opinion, to lose, father figure or family, like when you're still in kind of that developmental child's brain stage, and as opposed to someone like Ezio, or I guess Arno's second death. But I mean, I think it's just different. It's like he kind of carries that around. It feels like,
No, I agree. It is different. Like losing someone when you're a kid is going to be it's going to stay with you a lot more subconsciously than losing someone when you're older, where you're going to be more aware of what's happened, And I think that losing his dad and then being raised as a kind of outsider, that made him put up these walls, you know.
Yeah.
And I think Loomer, I think you're right. Like he doesn't let people in. Absolutely, and even Elise, you're right. You know, he's kind of he's tough and kind of cold. And I think it's because he's, you know, gone through this crazy stuff that he's gone through. I would have liked him to have opened up a little bit more. That's a thing that he and I don't have in common. I'm not all closed off like that. I'm super friendly and really emotional. I could just cry like that, you know.
So we have some questions moving on from this about the tie-in with Rogue. And at the end of Assassin's Creed Rogue, we find out that it's actually Shay Cormac who kills Arno's father in pursuit of this precursor box that he was hunting down. And we just very recently did a podcast with Stephen Piovesan, who voice motion captured, performance captured Shay. And we kind of touched on this a little bit there. It was kind of like really disappointing for me, and I think a lot of the fan base, that they set up something like this and then Shay is just completely not mentioned in any way, shape, or form in Unity. Like, he doesn't show up. Whereas I guess one of the biggest problems I had with Arno's motivations I couldn't understand is why he was so obsessed with hunting down Monsieur de la Serre's killer, but he doesn't appear to have any interest at all in finding out who killed his own father. It was very clearly a murder. And so we have a question here from Shakulu 101 in Scotland, who asks, do you think Arno would hunt down Shay if he discovered he was his father's killer, or is he over revenge?
That's good. Well, okay. I mean, just to address some of the thoughts about this, Arno lost his father when he was 8 years old. And I do think that stuff that happens to you when you're that young, you don't quite, you don't put an adult rationale on things that happen when you're that young, you know? I don't think that when he was 8 years old, he thought, I need to find who killed my father and kill him. I think he was just a kid who suddenly lost his dad, you know? But then he grew up. He spent much more time with Monsieur de la Serre in his household, you know? And he became an adult in that household, and he understood a bit better, okay, well, I know that I lost my dad when I was younger, but this man, he became my father, you know? And he has a more adult connection with him. And so when de la Serre gets killed, it does make more sense to him. I got to figure out who did this. Whereas I think the death of his father seemed like it was something, it's unchangeable, you know? It happened so long ago. It's what can I do about it? That happened, 12 years ago, or however old Arno is supposed to be. It's just ancient, not ancient history, but yeah, sort of. It's way in the past. Mm-hmm. It's not changeable. Whereas I just saw de la Serre get killed, or, he just died right in front of me right now. I can do something about this.
Yeah.
But then also, what's interesting is at the beginning of the game, Arno doesn't know who his father was. I mean, he knows that he was named Charles, but he doesn't know that he was an assassin. He only learns that after de la Serre's death. So I think that the idea of, oh, my father was a part of this huge, secret world. He was a part of something bigger than I realized. I think maybe it gets the gears turning in Arno's head a little bit more. So, maybe he starts thinking about revenge, subconsciously, or just on his own time. Starts thinking about it throughout the game. But then, of course, as our question asker Shakulu asked, is he over revenge? Well, I mean, the game ends with, Elise sacrificing herself, practically sacrificing Arno in order to achieve revenge. Like, Arno sees what that has done to her, what it has done to them. So it has definitely changed his mind about the lengths that one can go to in order to get revenge. Yeah. I think he saw Elise go mad for revenge.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting question to me. Would he hunt down Shay? I think he would probably think about it a lot. Now what Arno is doing right now is he's just thinking about it. He's thinking, should I try to find this guy? But I don't know, because I just saw the only person I loved kill herself for revenge. Yeah. I don't know.
So maybe not so much after Elise passes away, but beforehand maybe a little more.
Maybe, especially knowing, I think, that his father was part of, it wasn't just some random act of violence, right? Yeah. It was part of a bigger thing. Part of this war between Templars and Assassins. So it's a good question. I don't want to give like a cop-out answer to it,
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, people probably want to hear like, I will hunt him down until the day I die and tear him to shreds. But I don't know, guys. I don't know. I think Arno, maybe for the time being, has kind of like had his fill of death and destruction.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what goes on in that like 15 years between kind of like the end of Dead Kings and when he comes back with Napoleon to get the skull and put it in the catacombs. And apparently he rejoins the Assassins, which is totally glossed over. But I kind of get the sense that at that point he's probably found some measure of inner peace with things like, as you were talking about, like with what happened with Elise, and he's seen what revenge, like just straight up revenge, can do. And yeah, it kind of feels like maybe at that point he might not be as interested in pursuing it unless there's a real reason to go after Shay. But I guess I don't. Yeah, I think a lot of people, including myself, would probably feel a lot better about it. They're okay with his actions. It's more that the game never really lets us see him grapple with that or wrestle with that kind of question. It's just never even mentioned. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I think it's all kind of internal and off screen, I think, is probably the bigger thing that people have a problem with his actions, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we have one more question kind of related to that. This is from Allie in Cleveland, Ohio, who asks, do you think Arno's path will eventually pass with Shay's? And if so, how do you have any thoughts on how you would want that to happen? So it's a little similar, but a little different question.
Yeah, I mean, the thoughts I have on how that would happen would be sort of like another trilogy of games starring Arno.
Put food on the table for Dan for a while, and
and they should probably be shot on location in like Hawaii and Thailand and the African savannah, because those are places that I'd really like to visit. I mean, yeah, it's a very good question. Like, do I think Arno will cross paths with Shay in the AC universe? I mean, it'll probably happen in one of the novels or something. Yeah. I like to think that yes, Arno will have achieved some measure of inner peace, which doesn't mean that he will not be a badass assassin. It'll mean that he's, more collected and clear in his own thoughts and in his own being, and that he wouldn't just, automatically go nuts and go after the man who, he thinks killed his father. I think that Arno realizes that the world of the Templars and the world of assassins is a pretty crazy world. I compared the Templars to a cult before, and it's, I stand by that. These are some weird secret societies with, like, a whole history of causing a lot of death and destruction, each to achieve their own ends, And so I think Arno will remain suspicious of all of that. Even if he remains an assassin, he will always be a little bit on the outside of all of that, He won't just be, he won't be too dogmatic about it. His final I think his final speech, the final speech I recorded for the game.
Yeah.
He talks about how dogma can too easily lead to fanaticism, and he doesn't want to become a fanatic. So, should he ever cross paths with Shay? I picture like a really tense conversation, like in Inglourious Bastards, when they're having that conversation, like where there's like a gun under the table, and like they're in that bar or whatever, that German bar, and they're all like talking about nothing, but they all know who the other person is.
That was so intense. Yeah,
it was so intense.
Oh my God.
So I picture something like that, but they both have to use each other for some other reason, and so they know that they would like want to kill each other, but they can't just yet, and just like a lot of tension and blades drawn under the table, because I like that kind of drama.
I could even see them having a really tense conversation, but both of them, Arno with his understanding that's come with time, and Shay just with his values of not taking a life unless it's really necessary, despite what the Templars might order him to do. I could actually see them just kind of grudgingly being like, hey, it was business, like,
yeah, and just walking away from it.
Like,
I mean, in some ways, it sort of poetically balances that equation, right? Like, after all of that time with Arno pursuing this redemption over de la Serre's death, and then seeing what that earned him, and how much that it still ended up costing him, right? And then to finally be to meet up with Shay, who is very much like was not interested in necessarily killing people. Like, that wasn't his interest, right? Like, his interest was in saving people, and if people had to die in order for that to happen, then so be it. I think that actually would be kind of like an interesting, like, poetic ending for them both to meet up with each other and just be like, so all that killing was kind of lame. We should probably stop.
Yeah. Are we just going to continue to do this destruction that we're being ordered to do, or are we going to, actually think for ourselves about it?
A little bit of echoes of Ezio when he finally has Rodrigo on the floor of the temple, and he's just like, you know what? Killing you is not going to bring my family back.
So the next question, of course, comes from Doug V in Detroit, Michigan, and he would like to know if you think Elise could have ever persuaded Arno to join the Templar cause.
Oh man, that's good. That's good. Honestly, I don't think it's out of the question, because as we've talked about, Arno's most important thing in life is Elise. He has only has an adopted family, and it's Elise's family, and then de la Serre gets killed, and so he really just has her. And he at first, doesn't have a side to take in the Assassins versus Templars cause. He joins the Assassins because he's invited to.
Yeah.
Really. He's given the, address of the underground club, and he thinks, yeah, this is pretty cool, and I could use these skills, and I could use these resources. So at first, I think he doesn't have an emotional attachment to the Brotherhood. Although, in time, he does come to believe that in the Assassins versus Templars cause, the Assassins are the more level-headed ones. That's the way he believes.
Mm-hmm.
But if Elise had got to him before the Assassins did, I don't know. I think he might have followed her. He probably would have been like, I don't know, these like underground rituals you guys do are pretty weird. I don't know about these robes and all that, but do I have to wear this cross? I don't know. But maybe because a dedication to her and a love for her is in large part his like biggest motivation. That could be like an alternate history Assassin's Creed, like where Arno is a Templar and Shay remains an assassin. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there's enough kind of flexibility between the different orders over time that like it could really, even in Rogue, I think maybe we'll talk about this in a future podcast, but like I could very, very easily see a situation where Shay would have stayed with the assassins, and like it was only really through Achilles being a little not level-headed because of the death of his family that he kind of made poor judgments, and you know, Shay just wanted to save lives, and that's like one of the tenets of the creed. And it's, I think something very similar could, you know, Arno could have been persuaded, I think.
Yeah, because, you know, I think that in the end, okay, so, you know, the Templars, the Assassins, it's like they are different armies. They are different. You could compare them to armies, or you can compare them to religions. You could compare them to ideologies. They are different factions. And in life, you know, we join organizations for different reasons, but in the end, we make our choices because of something emotional and something that is personal to us. You know, like when people go to war, it's sort of a truism about war that while you might ostensibly be fighting for your country, really you're fighting for your family. You're fighting to protect your wife, your son, your parents. You're fighting to protect people who are very close to you, not the larger abstract idea of your country, you know? And so all of these characters, Arno, Elise, Shay, any of them from this world, you know, they join these groups, but the groups, as you say, they shift in their sort of in their ideologies, definitely in their manner of acting, you know. Really what keeps the people grounded and keeps them moving forward is like personal relationships.
It's pretty intriguing because, I mean, and this is the part where I go ahead and plug the Assassin's Creed Unity book, because the point is made on a couple of different occasions to Elise where she's told specifically, like, go get him. Like, his father was an assassin, but he doesn't know that yet. So you have to, it's your job to like induct him into the Templars. Like, go do it. And she kind of doesn't follow through that. One, because I mean, she feels bad about it, and two, you know, because she's not sure if she wants him to be a part of any of it, you know. Because of course she knows from a very young age she's a Templar, she's destined to be Grand Master, all these different things. But Arno is like a pure thing in her life.
An innocent.
Yeah. So she doesn't want to tarnish him in that way. And then also because, you know, that if he's out of it, then maybe there's a chance that they could be together. Right. So it's also pretty selfish too. Like, she doesn't want him to become an assassin, but she also doesn't want him to bring him over the Templars, because then maybe they could just have a relationship with each other.
Yeah. So to be clear, this is the novelization of Assassin's Creed Unity, which Gabe tells me may help with the fact that I don't like Elise very much.
Well, certainly, because I mean, it's all about Elise. There's very little about it's very little from the perspective of Arno, except for like a couple of like very small journal excerpts.
Interesting.
But yeah, so it's all about her side of the story and what she's doing while Arno is growing up. You know, of course, she goes off to a boarding school and she starts learning all about the Templars and is doing all this training, and she has like her own sort of mentor and stuff. It's a really incredible book. Like, wow. I definitely recommend it, because it's like the other half of the game in the same way that I think Forsaken was the other half of AC3, right? Yeah. Getting to know more about Hatham really helps you understand how he like interacts with his son. With Connor.
But at the same time, it's like you can't... I feel like these books always kind of have to walk this line of you want to put something substantial in there, but you can't... At the same time, you also can't hold back important things from the game, because...
Oh, for sure.
Like, yeah, for like sure. All these important characterizations of Elise, like, it's great that they're in the book, but it also... I feel like it's...
It would have been better if they were in the game.
You got to strike a balance between that. So it's tough. I sympathize, but yeah.
Okay, so let's see. We have another question from Wesley in Caçapava, Brazil, who asks, do you think that peace between Assassins and Templars is or will be possible, and was Bellec right by killing Mirabeau?
Oh, man. Might as well ask me to solve peace in the Middle East. I don't know. I mean, okay. Was Bellec right in killing Mirabeau? I mean, No, like it's dogma, and dogma is so dangerous because I mean I think this is one of the more interesting kind of sociological points that's brought up by the game. We have always throughout history used dogma, whether it's religious or political ideologies, to justify war and to justify just terrible injustices against humanity, and it's never right. And I think that the Assassins and the Templars, as long as they remain fixed to their own ideals, no, I don't think that there could ever be peace between them. What it takes is compromise to find peace between two opposing factions. So as long as neither of them back down on what they believe the correct way is, then I don't think there ever would be peace. And Bellec, he was a purist. He was a fundamentalist, I guess. He was a fundamentalist assassin, and he believed that Mirabeau trying to broker peace with the Templars was the same thing as Mirabeau just undermining the Assassin Brotherhood or just going against their beliefs. And he's crazy, like fundamentalists become. I thought he was a great guy at first, but
Really? Because he was always like, I don't know, I never liked Bellec. Like from the first piss pot, like the second he repeated, I'm like, I'm not gonna like this character.
It's Arno, because Arno needs that kind of tough love. He never knew real affection, so.
I really liked Mirabeau too. So I don't know. I was like, yeah, fucking let me kill Bellec already.
Yeah.
We already know what's gonna happen because I unlock his costume after sequence 7. So let me just get to it. Like,
God, I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, they're horrible about spoilers, like in the menus and database entries and unlockables.
Oh, Ubisoft.
You don't know.
Yeah, like
you don't know why you're gonna get it. You have no idea.
Why would you get it otherwise? I mean,
Maybe
I don't know.
maybe
It might
he
have
gave
been-
it to you.
Yeah, it might be the ceremonial rite of passage.
You finally earned your
Alright.
wings, Pisspot.
Oh, I see.
Here you go. Take
Listen.
my outfit.
Pisspot,
like
I
just-
just bought myself a really cool yellow suit. I want you to have my old outfit.
my old green one.
Yeah.
I'm getting married. Hand-me-downs.
All right, so this kind of segues a little bit, as we'll see further on, into the next section, which is always a favorite. So we have a question from the ones who came before in England, who asks, "What was your favorite line by Arno?"
Oh yeah. Okay. Great. I think I would say I had 2 favorite lines in the game. And honestly, I'm not even sure if they're both in the final version of the game, but I'll tell you what they are anyway. They both involve Bellec. The first one was, and like I said, I don't know if this changed, but after meeting Bellec in the Bastille, and he tells Arno where to find the assassins, and Arno eventually, after getting plastered out of his mind, decides to finally go. I'm going to go find these guys, And he goes to this place. He finds his way in, and he ends up in this like dark tunnel. And Bellec is there in the darkness,
Oh.
and he says like, "Took you long enough, pisspot." And then Arno says, "And how long were you standing in the dark waiting for me?"
That is in the game, and I loved that line.
Yeah. I thought that was so great.
Because it's like a lot of it's almost kind of meta, because like a lot of video games will like that would just happen and like it wouldn't be explained. So I really loved that Arno called him out on it, and that Bellec actually had a good response for it, where he's like, "Whoever pisspot, the guy saw you come in, you weren't very stealthy." Blah.
Yeah. But that's it. It's exactly that. It's like, it's meta. I loved it. It's so.
Hashtag pisspot.
Yeah, hashtag pisspot.
Yeah, I mean, normally you would just, like you say, like a weird dramatic thing like that happens in a game, and you just don't think twice about it, you know?
Yeah.
But no, Arno is like not down with all of this weird pageantry and like funny tricks and stuff. He's like, how long, really? How are you keeping yourself occupied? I was waiting, you could have been waiting for weeks.
All right, so here's a question. Did you see the Clueless Gamer episode that Conan O'Brien did on Assassin's Creed Unity?
I heard about it, but I didn't.
Oh, you gotta watch it. Because that sort of thing would be like because Conan, what I love about his Clueless Gamer episodes is one of the things I love is that he brings this kind of like perspective to video games that a lot of gamers take for granted. And so this is like totally something he would say. He'd be like, what, he's just like waiting there in the dark for him? Like, how long was he there for? Like, whatever. It's like,
yeah exactly. Cool. And then, well, the other line that I really liked is actually, it's like similar in a way, although I'm guessing other people don't find it as funny as I do. It just really tickled me for some reason. It's when in the game, at the point where you are given control over the cafe. I think that's what it's called, the cafe.
Yes.
Your headquarters, right? And so there's, again, not sure if this is in the end result, but there's Bellec brings me to a cafe, and he just says a couple of terse comments and then walks away. And then the woman working there is like, "Yes, can I help you?" And Arno goes, I think Bellec just gave me this cafe. And I thought that was so funny.
I don't remember that. Do you guys remember if that was in the game?
No, I don't think that made it.
I don't think it was, but I do remember doing a Twitter Q&A with you at San Diego Comic-Con where we were talking about that exact thing, and you mentioned that line, but we couldn't mention it in the Q&A because it could potentially be a spoiler, right? So,
oh my god, that's so weird.
But again, it's like one of those things where it's like there's a game mechanic, that needs to be put in place. Like you have a headquarters, that's just a normal game thing. But Arno's a bit like, what just happened? Did you give me a cafe?
I don't have any business acumen.
Like, don't I need to sign some papers or something?
Oh my god, that's funny. I also think it's kind of funny, like we usually ask this question of all the voice actors, and I don't know if it speaks to your personality or whatever that you go for like the funny like lines or whatever instead of the one that's like, oh, like dogma turns to fanaticism and like these like grand speeches, but like your favorites are just these ones where he's like, Bella gave me a cafe, you were just sitting here in the dark. Like
I don't know, I guess it's like the lines, it's the lines that I laugh about that stay in my memory. There were definitely cool like dramatic lines too. But I am a humorous guy. Laughter is important to me, and so the funny ones are what stuck with me.
Yeah, they stick with me too. Actually, with Arno's personality, I love the one where he's sitting outside one of the like it's like a mansion or whatever that he has to infiltrate, and there's like all these guards like everywhere, and he's just like, oh, that's not suspicious at all. Like, like I really love this kind of like meta aspect of his personality that they put in there. It's almost, he's almost commenting on video games.
Exactly.
It's just
love that. Or there's like a part around that same at the beginning. I think it's like that same mansion where he like gets up onto the balcony, and then one of the guards is like, "Get down here." And he's like, "Will you let me into the party if I come down?" No. Well, in that case, I'll stay up here.
Or another one I really liked in Dead Kings is he's just like, he like finds like the dead guy or whatever. I can't remember the exact circumstances. He's like, well, requiescat in pace, and like closes his eyes. And it's another instance where it's like kind of, it's a wink and a nod to the fans. Obviously, it's like, hey, whatever it is. Like, I think it also works because it's actually Latin, not Italian, and so he's not actually referencing Ezio necessarily, but it's kind of just like in a flippant
it's a cool sort of throwback to the other games.
So we have kind of a related question to the last one. This is from Mr. E Mystery from Sydney, Australia, who I'm sorry, I skipped ahead one. This is from Nevofix from Belgium, who asks, what was your favorite line, and could you say it with an exaggerated French accent?
Oh, boy. I don't want to get into this whole accent debacle again.
Yeah, we crawled out of it.
My favorite line, but with a heavy French accent.
Exaggerated.
I think Bellec just gave me this cafe. See, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that.
Did you want to also do the one about waiting in the dark, or is one enough for you?
Bellec, how long were you waiting in the dark? Just standing there waiting for me? Stupid. So stupid. I'm sorry. I apologize to everyone.
No, that's exactly what they asked for. They asked for exaggerated French accent.
Honestly, I apologize to everyone from France. J'adore la langue française, honnêtement. Je m'excuse. Je ne me moque pas de la langue française ou de l'accent français. That's all I have to say.
Now moving on to the actual line request from Mr. E. Mystery from Sydney, Australia. We know what side of the would he hunt down Shay or not debate he falls on, but he wants to hear, can you please say, Shay Patrick Cormac, you killed my father and I'm coming for you.
Ooh, yes, I will do that. I will do that for you, Mr. E. Mystery, but only if you make it your ringtone, okay? All right, let me find my Arno accent. Arno Victor Dorian. I think Bellec just gave me this cafe. All right, here it is. Shay Patrick Cormac, you killed my father, and I'm coming for you. How's that? Was that cool?
That was awesome.
Oh, so good.
There's
good.
There's a slight aspect of this where, like, I'm worried that Tumblr's gonna take that line and do something. Okay, anyway, well.
Oh yeah, they're gonna turn it.
Phrasing, as Archer would say, but no, it was delivered very well.
I think honestly, it's like tomorrow. It's going to be like, Ubisoft announces like that the next Assassin's Creed title is Arno versus Shay.
So we have a couple more line requests. This one's from Frets from Thailand. It says, "Can you please say, stop calling me a piss pot, old man?"
Yes. I would happily do that. Frets from Thailand. Also, I can say in Thai, sawadika and kap kun krap. So kap kun krap for your question, Frets. And here we go. Stop calling me a piss pot, old man. He's a bit annoyed there. He's a bit less tough, but I mean, I think that's because Bellec's getting under his skin.
Yeah,
Stop whining, piss pot, and get in position.
Yeah. Piss pot, piss pot, piss pot. So I'll ask this for Baranov, who I don't think submitted, but it's almost like a tradition. I would ask if you could also say, "I'm so tired of your shit, Bellec."
Wait, are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, fuck, why didn't you tell me?
Sorry, yeah. This is
all right.
It's an M-rated game. This is like when you go on the Ubisoft forums and they're like, "Oh, you can't post like swear words here," and it's like, "But this is what? This is a game where you stab people through the neck." And like, okay. Anyway, sorry. Forum policy is a whole nother.
You want me to say, "I'm so tired of your shit, Bellec"?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm so tired of your shit, Bellec. Go jump off of Notre Dame.
Bellec goes and swan dives in the best leap of faith ever. And he's like, oh, damn
it. Yeah. Oh, that would have been so nice to hear in the game. But thank you. That was awesome.
That's what everybody was feeling, yeah.
Yeah. So now we have a pair of requests that are actually kind of mirror, and we were talking about this earlier before the podcast. We did a podcast with Adrian Huff, who does Hatham, and he actually read a passage from Forsaken, which is largely Hatham's journal, and it was really cool. People really liked that. And so we had one request from Valentina, XX Lady Kazama 93, who's from Italy, who asks, could you read the first extract of Arno's journal, which is in the AC Unity novelization, September 12th, 1794. So this is like a month and a half after Elise passes away, as if it was Arno reading it. As if it was Arno reading it, please, she asked. And so Gabe was lucky enough to have his copy of the Unity novelization nearby, and I think we have it set up if you're okay with reading that journal entry.
I would be happy to. 12 September, 1794. On my desk lies her journal, open to the first page. It was all I could read before a flood tide of emotion took my breath away, and the text before me was splintered by the diamonds in my eyes. Tears had coursed down my cheeks as thoughts of her returned to me. The impish child, racing through the hallways of the great palace of Versailles. The firebrand I came to know and love in adulthood, tresses of red hair across her shoulders, eyes intense beneath dark and lustrous lashes. She had the balance of the expert dancer and the master swordsman. She was as comfortable gliding across the floor of the palace beneath the desirous eye of every man in the room as she was in combat. But behind those eyes lay secrets. Secrets I was about to discover. I pick up her journal once again, wanting to place my palm and fingertips to the page, caress the words, feeling that on this page lies part of her very soul. I begin to read.
Wow, very, very nice. That was awesome.
It makes me want to read more, that's for sure.
Yeah, you got to get a copy of the. We got. We were just
I
talking
think
earlier.
I think we can manage that.
Yeah, like
Yubi, send me all the books.
yeah, because we were talking earlier. We have this other book, the Abstergo Entertainment Employee Handbook, which is super awesome. By the way, it's got all these like physical notes like taped to the pages and everything, and like it's just really well done. But in this book, there are letters that Arno wrote as if he was writing to his father throughout his life. So the first one starts out when he's really young, and then there's like probably 4 or 5 of them total. And so this is actually an aspect where it actually kind of does give insight into the big question of what was Arno thinking about his father, growing up. Like, was he ever, because it just in the game, it seems like he just totally forgets about him. But I like that in the book, it kind of shows, it shows that at least someone was like, yeah, he was definitely thinking about his father all the time. And here's one way that we can kind of express that are through these letters. And we had a question from a request from Neo Nugget in Arizona, who asked, would you be able to read an excerpt of a letter Arno wrote to his late father from the Abstergo Entertainment Employee Handbook? I need my daily dose of feels, he says. So I think we found one that was a little shorter and it was a little less, specific. Some of them are like, oh, hey, I just saw Robespierre do some stuff and everything. So this one's a little more overarching, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll give it a go.
Awesome.
Papa, I do not know if there can ever be the peace between Templar and Assassin that you and de la Serre gave your lives to achieve. But I do know there can be friendship and love. I was raised as de la Serre's own son after your murder, and I grew to love his daughter as much more than a sister. She is beautiful and fiery and fierce, and has a terrible habit of getting us both into and out of scrapes. I wasn't sure, but now I know that she loves me as well. Perhaps I'll never be able to hold all her heart. It is too filled with many other dreams and deeds and adventures, but she'll have all of mine. And our children will be raised to remember and honor what both of their fathers stood for, the best of both Assassin and Templar, unity. Yours, Arno.
Oh, it's so great. Yeah, thank you so much for indulging all our requests for all these.
Yeah, I love this. I'm so glad that I got to read this and both read it for myself and also share it with the fans, because you're right. It adds so much depth and dimensions to Arno's character and the whole storyline.
So moving on from the line questions, we have another question from Mr. E. Mystery from Sydney, Australia, who asks, how would you describe the relationship between Arno and Napoleon, and why did it drastically change in Dead Kings?
Yeah, well, I think, when Arno and Napoleon meet in Unity, I think that there's kind of a grudging respect between the two of them. A lot of the people that Arno has met are either, figures who are well ensconced in the world of the assassins, or they're like weirdos like the Marquis de Sade, or they're straight up just like terrible people. He doesn't have a lot of people that he can feel like he can respect and be on a level with. The Marquis de Sade is sort of an ally, but an uncomfortable, uneasy ally, And then when he meets Napoleon, I think on both their ends, there's a kind of this thought of like, okay, here's a guy who knows what he's doing, who knows what's going on. And I think they both appreciate each other's sort of anti-authoritarian stance. Arno meets him for the first time, I believe, when they're both breaking into the king's palace. Mm-hmm. And so Arno doesn't know what he's all about at first, but he does know, here's someone that I can use. I can help, and he can help me in return. Mm-hmm. And they do get, I suppose, a little bit chummy, but it's still within this context of, you've got something that I want, or you've got skills that I can use. And they don't have any kind of personal relationship. It's like a working relationship. And then the question was, why does it change drastically in Dead Kings? And that's, it's because both of them have gone on very different paths. Both of them have gone through some very different things since Unity ended. Arno obviously is kind of, he's heartbroken, but also he's kind of a bit at a loss, and he doesn't sort of trust anyone. He certainly doesn't trust these, doesn't trust governments or huge groups, huge organizations. And Napoleon is really like, he's now even further along on his path for domination, and he's after this artifact that's going to give him, massive power, and he wants to use it to further his goals of becoming, Emperor of France and then Emperor of the world after that. Yeah. He's not, I wouldn't say that he's a madman, but he's mad for power. And so Arno sees that, and it doesn't I don't think it matters to Arno that, I once had a cordial conversation with this guy, because what he sees is, this guy's dangerous. It doesn't matter that I've hung out in his office. He's a dangerous guy now, and I've got to stop him.
Very, very smart, and you can, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that he's made it clear that he's extremely intelligent, and that his goal has become very clear, and that's to amass power. Yeah. And so you can definitely tell Arno is being like, okay, I need to hold this guy at arm's length, and I think a lot of fans I've seen in the forums too, it's like a lot of people there's been a lot of like speculation about like, the Napoleonic Wars and everything. And it seems like really rich territory to mine in a future game. Not that I expect to see one, but maybe in like a book or something would be really interesting to explore.
Absolutely. I think that's because, that is a question I know that's come up. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but I think it does feel like a natural progression for a story for Arno. Let's see him involved somehow in the Napoleonic Wars, because that's the next major event that is happening in his part of the world, you know, and he already does have a relationship with Napoleon. It's funny. I wondered actually in the performance of the scenes between Arno and Napoleon. I wonder if there was a kind of like friendship or closeness between the two of them that came across, because actually myself and the actor portraying Napoleon are good friends. Brent Skagford, the guy who played Napoleon, is a good buddy of mine. We've been friends for a while, and we improvise together from time to time. He's also an improv comedian, and so I wondered actually after we shot those scenes, I was like, were we too cool with each other in that scene? Because we have a great time working together. Because he's a great actor and good friend. But that's just a bit of trivia for you.
So, next question, again from Tyne, Denmark. How was your experience with working with the other actors? Can you share some stories from your time on set?
Yeah, I mean, the other actors who worked on Unity were all so fantastic. And in a lot of ways, they're some of the best theater actors in Montreal. Because the acting community in Montreal is fairly small, and a lot of people do both theater and film and television and motion capture and voice. You know, we kind of need to be able to do a lot of stuff as actors. We can't be too picky. We have to do whatever comes our way. And so a lot of the people that I was working with were just these fantastic Montreal theater actors. I'd already mentioned Brent Skagford, who's a good friend of mine, played Napoleon. I know him from the improv comedy world. Catherine Berube, who plays Elise, is another good friend of mine. We've done several plays together in Montreal over the years. We know each other very well. And that's always so nice because, to play an intimate relationship with somebody, it really helps if you actually do have a level of comfort with each other. So we're quite at ease with each other, and we've worked together a lot before. So working with Catherine was wonderful. It was also, working with Catherine also led to one of the funnier things that happened on set is we both, everyone who was doing the motion capture was also wearing motion capture, facial capture helmets. And these helmets, if you can picture them, they kind of, they sit on your head, kind of tight around the top of your head, and then there's these metal bars that stick out that kind of jut out from the side of your heads, like around your temples where your eyes are. These two metal bars jut out about a foot in front of you, and then they curve around and they form this kind of long grill in front of your face, and there's a camera at the end of it. These things stick out like a foot in front of you, and Catherine and I had to do a couple of scenes where we were like very physically close to each other, and in a couple of scenes we had to kiss. And so we have these metal antenna sticking out of our faces, getting close to each other is pretty awkward. So what they decided to do, what the director decided to do was, okay, we'll shoot one take without the helmets on. So you don't get the facial capture, but we'll get the natural motion. And so we did this scene that ends with us like holding each other and then kissing. So we don't have our helmets on, and it's normal. It goes fine. We do this kiss. Although then when you pull your bodies apart, all the Velcro on your bodysuit all kind of sticks together. And you pull apart from each other like, so we do one take like that. And then we do another take with the helmets back on so we can get our facial expressions. So we do the scene, we're talking to each other for a little while, we're just talking softly, and then what we have to do right at the end of the scene is we have to pretend to kiss each other so that the camera that's capturing our face can get the proper facial motions of kissing. So we just do this scene, and then we both we're 3 feet away from each other. We just sort of hold our arms out and just kiss the air right in front of each other. It was pretty ridiculous. I wish I could show you guys, but yeah, it was. That's just one of the things you deal with when you're working with motion capture.
All right, Gabe, you gotta hunt down the blooper reel of Dan and Catherine embracing the air and kissing the air. But that's really funny to hear, though, because like, you know, the next gen kissing, so to speak, and just the animations in general has been called out, you know, as one of the highlights of Unity. Like, so it's really kind of funny to hear that this kiss that everyone's like, oh my god, it actually looks like people kissing instead of just like mannequins rubbing their lips against each other awkwardly. And then like you hear it and you're like, oh yeah, we were just like 3 feet apart, just like making out with the air.
Well, yeah, I guess they mixed the two together, because we did shoot it where we were actually kissing, and then there was another shot where we weren't. We were just kiss it was floating in the air. But they made it look amazing, obviously. You know? And usually two people, in a game pressing their faces together looks like just like you said, mannequins.
Yeah. And it's also funny to hear another story because about these apparently these facial capture devices being so difficult to work with, because when we were talking to Stephen Piobasson, he was talking about a scene where he had to confront Achilles, and like he was like, in the moment he's like, the scene called for it, like I just got right up in his face, and then the cameras got entangled and they had to be like, stop, don't move, like
oh yeah,
that's $10,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they had to basically kind of do exactly what you just described. You know, they shot it in different stages basically. And and then
those helmets were always getting in the way for sure. And stuff, you know, sometimes there'd be things like, you know, we'd be throwing stuff to each other. Like I remember one scene, I believe it's in a prison in the Bastille, where Bellec kind of taunts me into fighting with him and into practicing fighting with him. And then he throws me a sword. And the first time he threw me the sword, the scene went so well. And then he threw me the sword and I went to catch it, but it hit my helmet instead. You know? Oh yeah, because I have like this piece of metal sticking out in front of my face. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, we had a ton of questions. We had another one from Eagle Assassin from Istanbul.
Yeah.
Do you have? Sorry, Andy, do you want to take
No,
this?
no, it's fine. I think you'd already touched on some of the funny stories and bloopers that happen on set.
Stephen had some really great blooper stories, and then Gabe and Andy were able to contact Ubisoft Sofia and actually get a rendered like animation of one of them, and
no
people
way,
really loved it. Yeah.
So as a follow-up to that story, though, I should provide the caveat that was like literally a once-in-a-lifetime experience, because we were like, oh, wow, do you guys have more? And there's like, there's like 37,000 hours of footage here, which, you know, it's going to cost some money to go through. If you guys want to, I mean, here are the hard drives. Right. There's 85,000 of them. Like,
all right, kickstart that shit.
So
we will kickstart the funding for an intern to go through these hard drives.
So yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was like
funny.
By some stroke of luck, that particular blooper struck a chord with the entire team in Sofia. So one of the producers was just like, "Oh no, we're animating this one," and because they had all of the data from the performance capture and stuff, they just applied it to the bones or whatever, and like. Rendered out a quick version of it, and there you have it. I don't know if it would work the same. Although I think, see, that's the thing, is somewhere there must be just like megabytes and megabytes and megabytes of video of Dan getting a sword thrown at him and dropping it.
Yeah.
Megabytes? Like, what are we in the 90s?
Sorry, like, gigabytes.
Sorry. Literally megabytes of this footage.
It's technically true. It's true. I mean, so there's trillions of megabytes.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It sounded really funny.
Megabytes and megabytes on so many zip disks.
Yeah. So in that vein, Dan, were there any other last funny stories and or bloopers that you could share with us that stuck out to you?
You know, one thing that was always interesting to me was learning about the process of game creation as I was going along and shooting this game. just learning about, how much time and effort and money in some cases has to go into creating certain elements of the game. There was this one point where Alex Ivanovich, who plays the Marquis de Sade, he was asking in a rehearsal, he asked, would it make sense? Do you think we could do this at the end of the scene? Could I take my shirt off? And it sounds weird, but it did sort of make sense. He's a Marquis de Sade, and it was in that scene where you're sort of we're in his like dirty little harem or whatever it is,
right?
So it totally made sense. He said at the end, since I'm getting cozy with this girl as Arno is leaving, could I be taking my shirt off? And the director, he thinks about it for a second. He's like, that would cost about $50,000. So he meant to animate taking a shirt off would cost $50,000 of like manpower, of work hours. Yeah. We're like, 50? What? That just blew my mind. I don't even know if that's funny or worth sharing, but it just blew my mind that it's like, wow, games are crazy.
I think that's informative, and it's also hilarious that the actor's just like, what if I just take my shirt off right now? Boom, boom,
that's
boom.
Alex Ivanovich. And another thing that I think is pretty funny is that in the motion capture studio, you're cast as one character. You're playing one guy generally, but then often actors have to fill in for other smaller roles. Yep. So there are several points in the game where Arno is suddenly surrounded by guards, and I am playing Arno, and I am also playing one of the guards. Which is pretty interesting to me, I think specifically the part where the Arno approaches the guillotine and Germain is on top of Germain's just given a speech to Arno, and then all of these guards come out from underneath the platform, and then Elise shows up and like kills some of the guards, and then they fight together. Anyway, when all these guards come out from underneath the platform, like I am also playing one of those guards. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to like limp a little bit so that when I watch the game, I'll know which one of the guards is me. I'm like, oh, it's the guy who's limping.
That's awesome. So we should probably wrap this up. This podcast is
way too long.
This must be taking up literally megabytes on your computer.
I know. I don't have enough. I need to swap out zip disks soon if we're gonna keep talking. What I thought we'd end on these questions, some questions about kind of Arno, the ending of both Unity and Dead Kings, kind of. Where Arno is at the end of both of those. And so our first question is from Nick from Canada, who asks, what are your thoughts on, well, I guess it's literally what I just said. What are your thoughts on the ending of Unity and the ending of Dead Kings DLC?
Well, I think that Unity had to end the way that it ended. I as I've said before, what Elise does, her actions are not necessarily pleasing, but they feel human to me, and it feels like the right dramatic ending to that storyline. And then Arno is left just, broken, sort of disillusioned and alone. And that's why I loved the DLC. I thought Dead Kings was so cool because it kept him in that dark place, or it starts him off at least in that dark place. Yeah. And he's saying, I don't care about anything. I want to get out of France. Yeah. That's his motivation sort of at the beginning. Like, I'll find this artifact, but as long as it means I can get out of France. And it was really cool to play him in this just broken and dark mindset. I relished that a lot. And I think that it's great that this darker story of the DLC did have a bit of hope at the end. You know, he's kind of reminded in a way because of this young boy, Leon, that he works with, that he meets. He's reminded of, you know, the hope, the loyalty and hope that one should have for one's country, for one's family. And even though Arno's lost all of his family, I think over the course of Unity and Dead Kings, he's kind of adopting this idea that, like, well, his whole country is his family. He might not have any people that he is close to, but he can stand up for his fellow countrymen, you know? Though by the end of Unity, he's kind of like, he's a bit hopeless. And so this kid in the DLC reminds him of that. Reminds him maybe a little bit of himself as a young boy, and I think gives him just a bit of a shot in the arm, you know, just like, get off your ass, man. Don't just mope around. Yeah, your girlfriend's dead, but get over it, you know. And you know, he doesn't have, like, Arno doesn't have this grand moment at the end where he says, you know, well, I'm going back to work, you know, I'm a hero again. It's a bit more subtle than that, but I think we understand that he's not as lost as he used to be.
Yeah.
And
well,
it leaves... Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, he actually does have that moment when he's in, you know, the catacombs where he's like, he kind of resolves and he literally says, like, for I am an assassin. And I kind of took that, I don't know, because the game's not really clear on what exactly happens after he's excommunicated from the assassins, but I almost see that moment not like, oh, I'm gonna get reinducted right away or anything. It's more like kind of like a frame of mind.
That's definitely the way that I thought about it when I was doing that. It's not that he is saying I'm still a part of the Brotherhood, or like, please guys accept me back into the Brotherhood.
yeah.
It is it's an attitude. It's like, I have a certain set of skills, and I have, you know, these ideals and beliefs behind them, and I will follow through, even if I'm not a part of the cool gang anymore. I can still do the work that I am able to do. So yeah, you're right. He does have that. I am an assassin, and so in my mind, he's kind of like, I mean, he's. I was going to say he's a rogue assassin. I guess I can't use that word anymore when it comes to assassins.
Copyright Shay Cormac.
yeah. But he's sort of like a, what's the medieval version of it? A knight errant. You know, he's like a knight without a castle. He's has a belief system, and he has these abilities, but he's not an official part of the team anymore.
I really enjoyed seeing, you know, his relationship with Leon and kind of finding, you know, a little bit of hope, as you said. It was really nice because I kind of feel like, to me, Arno, I see a lot of people comparing Arno to Ezio because, you know, they're both kind of like young rogues, as you had mentioned earlier, and, you know,
they're flippant and funny.
Yeah, they're funny, and and they're good with the ladies, you know, even though Arno is kind of devoted to just one, you know.
And she dies, so is he really good with the ladies? I don't know.
Yeah, right. But I don't know, as I thought about it more, as I was trying to figure out like how I felt like about the story and Arno and everything, like I came to just feel like he was more like Connor more than any of the other assassins to me, you know, in that, you know, he suffered kind of this trauma at a young age, and he kind of hides himself in a different way than Connor does, but he's still you kind of have to dig deep to get at him. It takes a lot more work to kind of relate to Arno, I think. But also, you know, at the end of AC3, Connor is left kind of just like this, in this state of kind of a broken man, the same way Arno is. You know, he's lost his tribe. He's done everything people like. He was, you know, they're both manipulated along the way, but, you know, they're both kind of in this state where they've lost everything. And Connor at least has this hidden audio file where he resolves to go on with the assassins. But for, you know, Arno, it's just like it skips ahead 15 years and it's like, you're an assassin again? Like, what's going on? But then it's nice to see like kind of the the Dead Kings aspect where he's grappling with it, and otherwise it just kind of feels like you just leave them in this broken state. It's not. It's intriguing, but it's not super satisfying all the time, I guess.
Right.
Sadly, yes. Like so many of the Assassin stories. Very, very deeply unsatisfying.
Okay, well, there's a difference with Connor when you put in this like excerpt in the handbook that's basically almost like openly taunting the fans about like, oh, you want more Connor? Well, guess what? He gets a wife and she like fucking leaves him and takes his kids and he's all alone. Lonely death of Rodon Again. Now, are you happy now? Like, there's a big difference between
Sir,
like
that is Abstergo propaganda.
Yeah, and all the bugs in Unity were the Animus's fault.
Oh.
Well,
I'm just saying you can't use these things as a cop out for every poor writing / whatever decision you guys make. You can't just do it. All right. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
A little bit. So,
sorry. Please go ahead.
We have another question from Valentina, Lady Kazama 93, and she's from Italy. And she asks, "Do you think that Arno was right to follow his heart instead of the creed, even if in the end things ended badly?"
Yes. Yes, I do believe he was right to follow his heart. Because we can't follow any creed blindly. The most important creed is the one inside yourself. I think that, you can't, like we were talking about before, I think that dogma too easily gives way to fanaticism. I believe that very much. And he always was doing his own thing, being his own man. And it didn't work out well for him, but I think that we have to be true to ourselves.
Very well said, I think. All right, we'll close. We'll close on one final question that we've already kind of touched on, but maybe just see if there's anything else you wanted to add. This is from Daniel Hemingway in Ireland, who asks, "Where do you see Arno's story going after Dead Kings, and where would you like to see Arno go next?"
Well, I think it would be great and make sense to see his story continue as Napoleon rises to power, to see Arno kind of on the outskirts of that and thinking, what is this madman doing? And maybe kind of opposing that in some way. Also, it could be interesting to see him, I don't know, around that time there was the Latin American wars of independence in Mexico and in Chile and all these different countries there. That would be cool to see Arno in South America as a kind of like renegade freedom fighter, a sellsword. But really, I just hope that he finds a girl with long red hair and marries her.
I'm going to call you Elise. That's not creepy at all, right?
I would love anything. I'd love to see any kind of continuation to his story. So we'll see. Stay tuned.
What do you think about any sort of future interactions with Leon? Because at the end of Dead Kings, it almost like, I don't know, maybe it's just the way the scene is shot or framed or whatever, but it almost looks like Arno's like, well, I'm going to stay here and be like, I'm going to adopt Leon. Like, basically, like, I'm going to save him from the orphanage almost type thing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that kind of aspect?
Yeah, I think it's deliberately ambiguous there, but I thought this is the first sort of person that he's connected with since all this gone down, and I think he does maybe feel a little bit responsible for his well-being and didn't want to leave right away. So maybe he did hang around with Leon for a little while longer, and maybe like built him into like an awesome little pint-sized sidekick. I like that, assassins and son.
I don't know if that sounds like responsible parenting, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, Arno's pretty fucked up. Right?
Yeah. All right, now stab like this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much. Why don't you let us know what you're up to? Are there any kind of upcoming projects you're working on at the moment? What we should see you in next?
I'm actually right now working on a project that is about as far from Assassin's Creed as I could imagine. It's a TV show for the Hallmark Channel, a very friendly, warm, safe, lovely show called The Good Witch. And that's going to be appearing premiering at the end of February 28th, on the Hallmark Channel in the States. And Anthony Lemke, who plays Bellec, is also in The Good Witch by sheer coincidence. And I play a young, nice, clean-cut cop. So you should check that out. And also I have a comedy troupe named Uncalled For that I work with all the time. And we have some videos. You can check us out on YouTube/We Are Uncalled For. Or you can go to our website, weareuncalledfor.com. Check that stuff out.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we didn't get to talk to as much about your improv background and everything as I wanted to, but definitely go check out all their work. Also, any social media links people can get in contact with you on Twitter, etc. You'd like to promote? You can
find me at DJ Not on Twitter. That's D_J_Not. And follow me on Facebook. You can find my Facebook fan page, Dan Jeannotte.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for taking all this time to chat with us about Arno. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
definitely. And thanks to, I just want to say again, thanks to all the fans. This has been the best, one of the best parts of this whole experience with Assassin's Creed Unity has been interacting with the fans. They're just such a passionate and fun bunch of people. So I really appreciate all the effort and love that they have and that they put into this. So thank you guys.
As we wrap up this episode, you can find more episodes of the Assassins Den podcast on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/loomer. Andy, would you like to plug your social media stuff?
Yeah, I think the best way people can get in touch with me is on Twitter. So that's at Escoblades, all one word. That's probably the easiest and quickest way to get in touch with me if you'd like to chat.
And Gabe?
I'm probably the most active on Twitter as well. Twitter.com/ubgabe.
Awesome. And I am also on Twitter, Loomer979, if you'd want to get in touch with me. Otherwise, I want to thank everyone for being on this episode. And we will be back very soon with more episodes about Unity and Rogue. So we will see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.